This is about to be one of the craziest podcast episodes of all time. We are back with This and That, episode 0, part 3, The Money Runs the World, aka The Great War section. So, This and That, part 1 gave you a tour de France on some of the craziest CIA operations, false flags, coups, and assassinations, and essentially the inner workings of the American deep state. Part 2 took you through some of the best resources, cases, studies, theories, etc. in the world of the UFO phenomenon and non-human intelligence, and those two episodes were honestly just a warm-up for what is about to happen today. So if you thought those first two episodes were pretty crazy, pretty conspiratorial, brace for impact, because this one is going to show you just how real this quote-unquote deep state, aka shadow cabal, aka the oligarchs who operate above government, aka the puppet masters who control our reality. We're going to peel back some layers in this episode. So not only is it going to be extremely apparent that the shadow cabal is more real than even most conspiracists think, but the realities of a very lengthy kill list is going to present itself in this episode. And if you use this as a base and you do your own research and you look up some of the names, some of the theories I put forth in this episode, it's going to become abundantly apparent that we do indeed live within a sinister system that is keeping humanity in chains from achieving world peace and free energy and evolving into our next layer of being. So before we start, I'll admit that this is definitely the episode I've been putting off for a while, a little bit of paranoia, but I do feel a moral obligation and honestly a higher calling to share these truths, because to be honest, there's nothing more important to talk about than what I'm going to talk about over the next hour or two. And if I'm going to start a media brand and a podcast, as I am, because I've been going down the rabbit hole for years and years and years, I'm going to talk about the most important stuff of all time. I'm going to synthesize the super scary reality that we live in. And while there is certainly part of me that thinks maybe I shouldn't talk about this stuff, the kill list, the free energy suppression, the sinister system, because honestly, it has gotten me paranoid and it has made me scared as someone pursuing a media empire in the 21st century. I know that I cannot shy away from these topics because, I can't live my life in fear, and I do feel a divine duty to help expose the corruption and evil on this planet and be a staunch advocate for world peace, for free energy, equality, justice, human oneness, etc., and help enlighten the public, and hopefully over the course of the next few decades play my small role in helping to advance humanity to morally evolve, not only morally, but energetically, from this barbaric state we have been contained in for way too long. So if that's the intro, here's a little bit more on the disclaimer aspect. So before I go through this episode, I want to be clear, I'm not accusing any specific organization, any government, or any individual of committing any crimes. I'm not exposing some brand new secrets. I'm not asking anyone to do anything. This is not even a call to action. It's merely a synthesis, a guided tour through public information, documented history, and controversial narratives that exist because power creates opacity. I have no ambitions to ever get into politics. I want to put that out there now. I'm just a journalist. I'm just a podcaster. I'm not trying to get Kirked or JFK'd or MLK'd, and the list goes on. We're going to get into that in a moment. But just let the record indicate for now, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm not trying to actually challenge the system in any way. These oligarchs that do run the world, I'm not trying to challenge them. I'm just going to be a user of the First Amendment. I'm an advocate for free speech. That's all I am. I'm a podcaster. I'm a talker. I'm a journalist. I'm a truth seeker. I'm an intellectual astronaut. I'm not a reformer. I'm not going to ever get into politics. So, I did not begin this whole media brand thing to ever be a rebel-rousing conspiracist or an enemy of the state or a threat to the cabal in any form. It's not my intention to ever be anyone's enemy, but, obviously this is part of my first ever podcast episode ever. I don't have any type of following yet, but, if I'm lucky enough one day to have my day in court on the JRE or Tucker or Lex Friedman or Sean Ryan or whatever, I feel the need to say it from the very beginning, especially before an episode like this and before my, podcasting YouTube career. I'm not trying to challenge the system. I'm not even trying to encourage any actual reform, because as I have come to learn, reform is quite dangerous. I'm just trying to inform the public, inform my peers, and this system can keep killing political reformers and free energy inventors and various whistleblowers. Keep in mind that these are probably the same people trafficking children and doing what they want to them, raping and potentially eating them. But, they can keep doing all that. That's fine. But I'm not trying to stop any of the corruption that goes on in the world. I'm just trying to use my First Amendment and enlighten the public. So this episode is officially called Money Runs the World, aka the Great War, because I'm going to describe a pattern that shows up across industries and across decades when a person or an invention, a movement, or a truth threatens a massive system of profit and control. The system tends to respond, and sometimes it responds through PR, sometimes through regulation, sometimes through lawsuits, sometimes through buyouts, sometimes through censorship, but oftentimes, historically speaking, through blackmail, coercion, or murder. So, I'm not here to play judge. I'm just here to ask the questions, who benefits, who loses, what incentives are operating, what's being documented, what's disputed, in order to understand that while some of the cases I'll talk about today are documented and verified, there is a large portion of what I'm going to discuss today is completely a mystery and unproven and unresolved. So a lot of the stuff is going to be speculative, and while it's going to be based on facts and based on broader concepts and patterns, just know that some of the stuff I'm going to say is very speculative today, so do not take my word for it. Of course, do your own research. And so, I'm not pretending that the world is run by, a couple cartoon villains, because power is obviously more boring than that. It's networks, it's incentives, it's careerism. Don't rock the boat. It's too big to fail. Money often protects itself. And so, as stated, I'm not going to blame specifics, but if you're listening because you feel that there is this hidden architecture behind politics, media, tech, healthcare, energy, and war, this is the episode where we're going to map that architecture. And so, in a nutshell, that architecture includes the Great War segment, lists and case studies of all the martyred assassinations on various whistleblowers, political reformers, free energy inventors, decentralized crypto moguls, consciousness pioneers, and more. Say what you want about the quote-unquote deep state kill list, but there is a very lengthy number of people who have challenged the system in some way and ultimately died or disappeared or been murdered or quote-unquote suicided, whether it's right as their inventions were approaching commercialization or right as they were about to blow the whistle on something big. Maybe it is all one big coincidence, but if you're as far down the rabbit hole as me, you don't tend to believe in coincidences. So we're going to get into these patterns of free energy suppression, petrodollar hegemony, the Federal Reserve control system, the crypto Epstein theory. We're going to go through some Manchurian candidates and how that connects to the system at large. Talk about the asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard and how they're connected to the Federal Reserve. Get into the planned obsolescence system, big pharma, modern day slavery, et cetera, et cetera. And some of this is going to be in the Money Runs the World Part 2 episode, which is going to follow this episode. So to conclude this intro and disclaimer, I'm just going to say, once you spend as much time as I have really diving deep into the control system and who really runs the world, once you look at money, power, and unnatural deaths long enough, it can make you feel like you're staring at a 1984 Matrix type of machine that never sleeps. And so the existence of this deep state and shadow cabal, or whatever you want to call it, it becomes overwhelmingly clear. But the one true thing that runs the world, it's not just a single organization or family or entity or society. It's not just the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers or J.P. Morgan or Israel or the CIA or the Federal Reserve, or the Royal Family, Bohemian Grove, etc. Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign Relations, Freemasonry, a lot of people point to. It's one thing that represents all of those entities, and it's one thing that represents the evil, the greed, the power hungry, and at times psychopathic and borderline satanic nature of these oligarchs, the same oligarchs that likely were behind the JFK assassination. And that one thing is money, because money is power and power is influence. So without further ado, welcome to TNT episode 0, part 3. Money runs the world.